We have a pretty complicated expression in this one. A lot of trig functions there. There's a few ways to do this one, just like all the others. But if we want to follow some of the same guidelines we have done in the past, here is what I see. In the bottom part of the fraction, we have a couple trig functions here that are being multiplied together. There's no addition or subtraction there. So even though there's some addition in the top, I'm going to rewrite this so that instead of dividing by our value down here, we're going to multiply by its reciprocal. Again, when there's no addition or subtraction here, I can take both of these, and instead of dividing by each one, I can multiply by their reciprocals. So instead of dividing by secant, I can multiply by its reciprocal, which is cosine. And instead of dividing by cotangent, I can multiply by its reciprocal, which is tangent. So in the top right now, what we have is a cotangent of our angle plus a cosine of our angle times the cosecant of our angle. That's the original numerator. And I want to multiply that entire quantity by the reciprocal of each of those trig functions in the bottom. Because we're multiplying the entire quantity, I do need that top to be in parentheses. So, changing this from a division problem into a multiplication problem, dividing by the secant would be the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal, which is cosine. And dividing by cotangent would be the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal, which is the tangent. So now I have a quantity here being multiplied by these two terms, or these two values, I guess. We're going to take these two values that we have out here on the end, and using the distributive property, we're going to multiply that by both of those terms on the inside of the parentheses. So we're going to multiply this by the first term here, which is cotangent, and then multiply it by the second term, which is this cosine cosecant term. So first, let's multiply this cosine tangent value into the cotangent. So we're taking the cosine of our angle times the tangent of our angle, this, and we're multiplying it by the cotangent of our angle. And then there's an addition symbol. So there's the first part using the distributive property, multiplying these two values by this first term. Now we're going to multiply these two values by the second term. So cosine of our angle times the tangent of our angle, we're multiplying that by these two terms, which is a cosine of our angle times the cosecant of our angle. It doesn't look like we've simplified things too much yet, but now we have this chunk here in front of the addition symbol, and this chunk here after the addition symbol, and each of those chunks do not have any addition or subtraction with them. So I am going to take this right here, and I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to write each one of those chunks using only sines and cosines. So to do that, let me just start by taking a look at cosine here. Cosine is cosine, and that's what we're trying to change things into, either sine or cosine. So that one I don't need to change. Tangent, I need to change that into sines and cosines. We do have a Pythagorean identity that will allow us to do that. The tangent of our angle is equal to the sine divided by the cosine. So let me rewrite the tangent of our angle as the sine of our angle divided by the cosine of our angle. And then we have one more trig function here, cotangent. I want to write that with sines and cosines. So looking at this identity, the cotangent of our angle can be written with sines and cosines if we write the cotangent as the cosine over the sine. And that is the first part in front of that addition symbol. Now I want to do the same thing with those 4 different trig functions we have after the addition symbol. Cosine, again, is something we're trying to change that into, so we don't need to change anything there. Tangent, that's the quotient identity here again, so sine divided by cosine for that one, just like we did here. We have cosine again. We're changing things into either sine or cosine, so I'm going to leave that like that, just as a cosine, and then that cosecant out on the end. Using this identity here, one of our reciprocal identities, the cosecant of our angle is 1 over the sine. So the cosecant there is 1 over the sine of our angle. All right, I have everything written with sines and cosines. So now if you look at our 2 chunks, this piece here in front of the addition symbol, and then this piece here after the addition symbol, we've taken everything from up above, rewritten that with sines and cosines. In our next step, we're still going to have that addition symbol in the middle, but if I look at just this chunk, there's no addition or subtraction here, so we can start canceling some things out. Anything that is in the top that matches something in the bottom, we can get that to cancel. So I have a cosine in the top here, and a cosine in the bottom here. Again, I'm only looking at this group. I can't cancel anything from anything in this group with something on the other side because of the addition in between. So just looking at this grouping, no addition or subtraction in this grouping. So if there's something in the top and in the bottom that match, I can get those to cancel. So those 2 cosines would cancel. I have also a sine in the top here and a sine in the top or in the bottom here. So that's everything that cancels in that first group. All I'm left with is cosine and the number 1 on the bottom. So it's cosine over 1 or just cosine once we get some canceling to happen there. If you look at the second group, again, there's no addition or subtraction anywhere here. So with all 4 of these fractions, if I have anything in the top that matches something in the bottom, I can cancel those out. So these 2 cosines cancel. I have a sine here on the top and a sine on the bottom. Those 2 sines cancel. And if we look at what's left on the top, there's just cosine times 1. So that's just going to give us a cosine in the top, and on the bottom 1 times 1 is 1. So it's going to be cosine over 1, which is just cosine. So everything to the left of the addition symbol simplified to a cosine, everything to the right simplified to a cosine. Now I have a cosine plus another cosine. That's going to give me 2 of those. So that's equal to 2 of those cosines, and that is our simplified answer.